All right, Mr. Ryan Lee, welcome to the Up Coach Show. It's really exciting to have you.
Todd, you're not as excited as I am. Let's go. Let's up coach this baby.
As you can tell, Ryan has a certain level of energy that he brings to everything that he does. It's one of my favorite things about him. We've been good friends now for about 13 years. But before we kind of jump into the thing I'm excited to talk to you about, and someone that is in my kind of purview, a real authority and expert at talking about this shift that you're going to expand on. Where did Ryan Lee start in this world of kind of expertise and coaching? Like, how long have you been doing this, and where did you kick things off?
Very long time. Well, I mean, you could actually trace it back to my first job right out of college back in 1994. And the first 6 years I spent as a recreational therapist working at a children's hospital. And I mean, I was coaching them. We had physical activities, there was a lot of the emotional side to it. Then on the side, I was a part-time trainer. I started a strength and conditioning program for young athletes. So I was coaching them at the time. So I was always coaching mostly kids at the time. And then it started to transfer over to online as I built my first sports training membership site back in the late 90s. And that's when it started to go from, okay, just teaching strength and conditioning, working with kids, to now working with adults and actually coaching them through online fitness and writing up training programs and accountability through email. This is before you could do really online video, right? It was all dial up.
Yeah,
And
what's
then,
just unique
yeah,
about you is you started doing digital marketing long before it was even close to being easy to do it online. I mean,
yeah.
I remember my first ever website URL that I purchased back in the mid 90s cost me like $700.
They were
Which
expensive.
they
Yeah,
they were very expensive, right?
yeah.
And then even the idea of setting up a membership site, there was no like platforms to go and use. There was
No.
no, easy plug and play WordPress themes and or whatever the case is, right? So
Yeah.
you broke into that. What you just said something about kind of like where you started though, because we
Hmm.
had a bit of a similar starting point where we both started working with actually young teenagers and kids.
Hmm.
What major advantage do you think that gave you as a skill set when you started working with quote adults? Because it
Um,
gave me a
well,
major skill set that helped me out a ton.
well, first, so the first 6 years again, it was in a children's hospital, so it wasn't just kids and teens. It was kids and teens with mostly with physical disabilities, but a lot of them had multiple disabilities. So I had kids with cerebral palsy and spina bifida and spinal cord injuries and head injuries. So it taught me, first of all, putting things in perspective, right? So when I would coach people and they get stressed out over a little thing, I'm like, let's relax. Like, we're good. Like, it's we're gonna get through this in
Mm-hmm.
perspective. It's not really the worst thing in the world. But it also taught me a lot of patience as well. And
Yeah.
and with those kids as well, especially the kids with the disabilities, and I know you've used this word a lot, and I love this word too, just like grit, right? And resilience, and seeing how much resilience they had and how hard they worked. One kid is like, "Oh yeah, it's my 19th surgery," and the kid was like 15 years old. Um, and seeing how much grit and resistance they had, and resilience, and then kind of bringing this over to coaching and working with adults, it definitely set up a really strong foundation.
Yeah.
That was that. Yeah.
Well, I mean, you just have such a massive breadth and wealth of great stories then that you can
Hmm.
bring into your coaching to set perspective with your existing clientele, because you can say, hey, I remember when I was working with this young kid who had spina bifida in the Bronx. Because if you can't detect it in Ryan's voice, he is as New York as you can get, even though he's out in
Yeah.
Connecticut now. But and it's that storytelling, which that's another interview that I can do with you at another time, because you're
Hmm.
phenomenal at storytelling. That really helps to set up that perspective for people. So, and actually,
Yeah.
like sometimes I forget where you also started, because it also explains why you have so much. So to the listener, Ryan has been a key influence in the starting points of many of some of the biggest names and influencers in not only the fitness world, but also in the kind of, let's say, digital marketing and influence world, because of the events that he ended up holding throughout the 2000s and 2010s. So he really is a point of light that a lot of other people will point back to as a great influence and starting point for them. Okay, so
I appreciate
you
it.
had
Thanks, Don.
just made the transition, though, Ryan,
Mm-hmm.
of talking about. Okay, so here you are. You're working with these young people, and then you started getting into delivering training in a membership type format, which it basically
Right.
makes the transition into what you wanted to talk about. What was that?
Right.
What was one of those? What was that one thing that made a very big difference in your progression of either building your skill set or your business itself?
Well, in terms of kind of shifting the way I thought about my business, but on a different level, coaching, right? Because I knew from the beginning, when I started to build my online business, that I still wanted to have a life. I was never attracted to scale, hustle, you know, kill yourself kind of thing. And I knew
Yeah.
eventually my wife and I were going to want to start a family. I was going to want to be a dad. So I wanted to build the business around my life. So I was thinking from pretty early on, how do I get more leverage? And I was doing at the start one-on-one coaching, especially in the online fitness. So people would email me their age, their weight, and I would create training programs for them. But that became pretty time consuming. And then I said, well, how do I help more people at once? And that's when I said, okay, let me create what was people were just starting to call it a membership site, but it was still pretty early on. So I basically took all the articles that I'd written and other people had written, put them behind a paywall, and
Mm-hmm.
then the biggest reason I think that the site succeeded, the business succeeded, was we had a private community, a forum. This was before Facebook, before social media. So
Yeah.
it was a place where everyone could gather. But what was really cool about it with the coaching, I was kind of leading the charge, but other people were chiming in and helping each other. You could almost call it just accountability, community, whatever you want to call it. But it became this kind of living organism, and people were just helping each other out, especially with skill sets that maybe I didn't have. I was a track athlete all through high school and college, and I was really good at sprinting and speed training. But if
Yeah.
someone had a question about like certain types of power lifts, and I wasn't a competitive power lifter, someone else can say, "Oh, well, make sure you do hip flexion on this movement." And it was really interesting to see that kind of phase one of my career coaching online fitness and strength and conditioning. The community was, though, the shift where I'm like, okay, instead of just working with one person at a time, I could have thousands of members in there
Mm-hmm.
getting coaching, accountability, community under, and I'm kind of bringing it all together, pulling the resources.
Yeah. So was that difficult for you though? Because that is a challenge. I remember what it was like for me when I was so much of my identity was wrapped up in being this great performance and mental toughness and mental game coach. And
Mm-hmm.
no matter what I put out there, at the end of the day, people are only going to want Todd. They're not going to want this other thing that I might produce. And I know that is a inflection point of, a paradigm that needs to be broken for many people. So
Right.
how was that a difficult thing for you to overcome, that you were now not going to be just delivering these one-on-one training plans for people, but now it was the value is going to be served by people or community other than you?
It really wasn't. I mean, and maybe naively
I'm glad you
so.
said that, because I was going to, because sometimes people go, oh yeah, it was so hard. But really there are some people that it wasn't as difficult.
No,
So
it actually wasn't difficult at all. It was much easier. It was a relief. I suddenly felt like, my God, I don't have to do it all. Like I enjoyed it. However, with that being said, I was a little naive because I would, at the very beginning, I would just let kind of everyone in, right? Like, oh, someone would email me, especially because at the beginning I was kind of owning that tribe, right? And someone would email me,
Yeah.
oh, can I teach them how to market with this? I'm like, sure, sounds good. And then they'll come in and they'll say, oh, email me for more information. And then someone would message me like 2 days later, like, Ryan, that guy you had on, he's trying to like hard sell me at this
Mm-hmm.
coaching, and he ripped me off. And all of a sudden, that was something I didn't realize.
Well, it
So I
was so funny because
became,
it goes back.
yeah.
You're really in the Wild West days of like internet marketing,
Oh, yeah.
right?
Oh,
So there were people
yeah.
coming out of the woodwork
Yeah.
to do that. So yeah.
Yeah. And I'm very trusting, to a fault. And I still am. I mean, that's my set point is like, okay, I'm going to trust you until you kind of screw me over.
Yeah.
So I let a lot of people in. Now I'm a little bit pickier. And I think now what I do is, now that I'm known more for teaching business and entrepreneurial skill sets, I still take the lead now when I teach and in my community, but
Mm-hmm.
I'll find people with very specific slices of knowledge, like really, really
Yeah.
defined knowledge skill sets, and then bring them in. But I'm always there, right? So I don't just send them out and say, and get lazy and say, oh, okay, you're really good at doing, teaching Instagram reels. Could you just record a 30-minute video, or can you do live training? I'm going to go, swim with my kids. I'm there kind of still. They still see my face as part of it. Now, does that give me 100% leverage and free time? No, but that's okay, because I think that's what helps bridge the gap. And yeah, I make sure, and I try to get people who, at least in my thing that I'm teaching business, that have a skill set, but do it in an adjacent market. So, for example, they're not teaching Instagram reels, and the only way they make money is on Instagram teaching Instagram reels. So it's like,
Mhm.
hey, this is a fitness pro who gets 10 new clients a week by doing Instagram reels. Okay, let's see how you do your Instagram reels. And I
Yeah.
know that maybe sounds a little bit nuanced. Maybe it doesn't, but I like people who are kind of in the real world building things and businesses and coaching that they're not just making money teaching business and coaching. So that's another thing I try to stick with as
Sure.
well. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's what I call practitioners, people who are actually, executing the work as well.
Yeah.
Um, So, okay, going back to this whole transition into this inflection point that you had, which was going into now building communities. And you really are the very first, because I've been in this space now since 97. I resolved as well early on that, as a Gen Xer, I saw this whole shift towards the internet early on. And I kind of was maybe an early adopter of that world in trying to, connect with athletes as well. And so what are some of the keys for you so that the listener can walk away with some better ideas for building community? What are some of those keys for you that make communities really work? I think you already talked about one, which is making sure that you're really inviting in, not only just from the expert level that might be coming in and contributing, but also from the community side of things, that you're really specific about who this group is for.
Right. Yeah. And that starts with your marketing, like being very purposeful. Like when people see my community stuff, I'm not trying to attract the 18-year-old who wants to,
Sure.
just model bikinis on, like, I'm not. That's just not my crowd. And if I think, that's like it's marketing 101.
Yeah.
If you try to attract everyone, you attract no one. So I'm pretty clear with who I'm serving without necessarily calling out. And you've helped me get clarity on that. I'm like, should I just call Gen X? You're like, you don't have to. It'll become apparent.
Yeah.
Um, but also, if someone gets in, and
Wait,
this
sorry, I want to
happened,
stop you. I just
yeah,
want to stop you there because that is such an important point that you just, we're about to skip past. That sometimes, I mean, I can catch myself, and then when I do my final edit draft of something, I'm like, wait, you don't have to be so explicit. For
mhm,
example, like we would see it in maybe an ad on social media where it says, "Hey, are you a coach that?"
mhm,
And so what I see with some people is they're trying to perfectly identify the exact quote avatar or persona of person, and they're
right,
thinking it from like a demographic standpoint. And I'm like, you don't need to do that. If you
Mhm.
just talk about it from like a psychographic standpoint, you're going to
Right.
automatically sift and sort people. And you have to be so explicit with like, oh, they are a blonde haired 35-year-old male. That you don't have to be so explicit
Right.
with the way that you would
Yeah.
market that. So, okay.
Yeah. No, exactly. And again, you've been instrumental in helping me do that because I was for a while. I'm like, do I just call out Gen X? And you kept saying you don't have to. So that's one thing. But now it doesn't happen as much anymore. But if someone gets into community, especially if you have a community forum or private group or Facebook group, and they're not the right fit, or they're aggressive, or it just doesn't, whatever the vibe
Yeah.
is, that's just not fitting, you have to remove them quickly, even if it means sacrificing some money. And some people are scared to turn away even like $20 a month. I'm like,
Sure.
you have to do that, because that comes to really, I think the reason my communities work is because it comes down to trust, right? They have to trust whoever the leader of the community is and who's kind of the face of it. And they have to know you're always going to have their back and you're always going to do what's best for them. Like if
Mm-hmm.
they think it's just a holding group, so you can charge you $50 a month and then you're going to sell them something more expensive down the road, that's the whole purpose of it. They know, right? They're not dumb. So you have to protect them against just all this stuff, and they have to know you always have their back. And when you screw up, admit it. And there's times where I screw up. Oh man, I missed last week's call, or I was off by an hour, whatever it is. Here's what happened. Here's why it happened. I'm so sorry. It's never going to happen again. None of this like corporate mumbo jumbo. We sincerely apologize for the inconvenience. No,
Uh-huh.
step up, man. I screwed up. I'm sorry. My bad. 100% my fault. It won't happen again. Let's go. And people are like, wow, that's so refreshing. But it's just being a human being, just being honest.
Mm-hmm.
But you got to protect them and just have integrity. Like if they have to know you're just going to lead them and tell the truth. Like that's such a big thing with community. And I know it sounds common sense, but so few people do it. They always have a hidden agenda and everything is sneaky, and they're just they're teaching the the why, and then they're going to sell the how, and they're just like, it's just this game that a lot of coaches have been taught over the years. And
Well, and I mean, I think even on that, to kind of allay some people's fears around community building, is that there is a lot less how that's needed anyway, because that's not
Mhm.
really the overall value lens that someone is looking to extract from the community to begin with anyway.
Mhm.
They're
Right.
looking for people to connect with, to commune with, to bounce an idea off of, like in whatever vein it is, to be inspired by someone who might be just a little bit further ahead, or they took faster action on something. And it closes the feedback loop of like, oh, okay, well, if I was just more consistent and disciplined over the next week or 2 weeks, I could get to that as well. And it's not the expert telling me, it's actually someone who's my peer.
Right.
Um, and so I think some of the stuff that you were just talking about kind of leads back to like in your community, whether it's kicking somebody out. And again, not to paint the horrible picture that this stuff happens frequently,
If it
but
rarely, I mean, I honestly can't remember the last time I did it. It's been
sure.
years.
Yeah. But it's because I think you really lead through values.
Right.
So
Right. This is
when you,
this is who we are. This is what we stand for. Uh,
yeah,
um, and I just wanted to add one more thing just before I forget, is that another important part of community, which I think sometimes as coaches we forget and as practitioners we forget this, is that even if it's a very specific topic we're talking about. So let's say you're coaching, you know, attorneys, right? You're high performance attorneys.
mm-hmm.
They're still human beings, and when they're, let's say you have an event going on and you have 500 of them during the breaks, they're not just talking about torts, right?
Yeah,
They're talking about their families. They're talking, oh my God, did you see that new show? Did you see Game of Thrones? Like they're talking about other stuff. And I think sometimes as community leaders, we're so scared to get out of our topic. Oh, we can't talk about anything that doesn't have to do with, legal high performance. And what's crazy is that when I bring up topics like that, so for example, my group, which tends to have more Gen X, I'll say,
yeah,
what 80s movie have you watched more than 5 times or something? And
yeah,
that will get more like engagement and smiles and, oh my God, this is great, versus, what's your favorite email,
Yeah.
headline? And I'm
Yeah.
not saying you have to do it all the time, but don't be scared to throw that in there because we're still human beings and we still want to talk about other stuff. So I think that
So
adds a lot of
to
texture and humanity to your group.
to only build on that, a guy that I know has a very thriving tech community. I think it's uh, what's I forget the actual term, but anyways, they're guys who are running basically the tech side of a larger company. And one of the things that he does is he does watch parties every month where they pick a sort of futuristic type movie that
Hmm.
kind of involves tech, like whether it's Tron or whatever. And they just do a watch party where they live stream it into the group. And then people are like chatting away as they're watching it, like, oh, I love this scene, or oh,
It's
this could
great.
never happen, or how could we do this today?
Yeah.
Um, and he was telling me, this is like a year ago, he was telling me that it's one of the easiest things he's ever done, but it's the thing that they get the most excited about.
Hmm.
And it's such a massive bonding point, and it has nothing to do with helping these people build their careers,
Right.
um, quote, technically, but it actually does help them build their careers because they create a stronger bond with each other. And he said, the moment we started doing that more, about 3 months into doing 3 of these movies, we started to get more vulnerable posts in the group itself because people had built stronger trust and bond over shared experiences. So I think
Mm.
that's the big takeaway for me in some people that do great jobs at community, and you're very, very good at this, is creating shared experiences, which then creates that sort of real community feel that you can't get. Had nothing to do with your own content, had nothing to do with
Right.
you doing a coaching call or a group coaching call with people, had everything to do with you designing an experience that then caused people to connect.
Yeah. And that's where a lot of the good stuff happens, right? And
Mm,
I don't see a lot of community leaders doing it. I they get nervous and I think they think that everyone's going to leave their group where they think everyone's like, oh, I'm here just for my attorney marketing ideas. When
sure.
you know, let them in. And also, if you do have passions and hobbies, fold that in. Like even if people aren't on the same page as you and like you're into Harley Davidsons and someone doesn't like
Yeah.
motorcycles, it doesn't matter. They still enjoy seeing people who are passionate about something. So
Yeah.
I like to add that into everything I do. And I think it makes the experience just much more rich. So and it enjoyable, honestly. Like I can't just talk about marketing all day. I want to talk
Sure.
about movies and TV and other
Yeah.
things. So
Yeah.
it's fun. Yeah. And you don't have to do as much. So
And I encourage people, Ryan, if you go to ryanlee.com, one of Ryan's great superpowers is his email newsletter and his sort of like email strategy that he does. And I think you've been writing an email a day for, I don't know, 15
uh,
years now.
over
And it's
20.
like
Yeah.
yeah, it's a master class in showing up consistently, which is one of your great superpowers. So
I
beyond
appreciate it.
ryanlee.com, or is that, where else can people kind of find you, engage with you across the interwebs, Ryan?
Just go to, the best place, honestly, is just go to ryanlee.com and just get on my newsletter. I call it daily ish. And yeah, from there, you'll figure out what you could find me on Facebook, Instagram. I'm going to
Yeah.
start my new YouTube channel. So
Yeah.
I'm going to be in your face and you're not going to be able to escape me now.
Ryan, as always, it is a pleasure to get your energy into our world. So thanks for showing up today, and
Thank you, my
appreciate all the
friend.
little nuggets that you shared.
Anything for you, anything for Up Coach. Go Up Coach, baby. Get in, Up Coach. Up your coaching. Do it now. Use, if I had an affiliate link, I would drop it right now so I could cut off Todd's profit. Because just
Profitability.
check out Up
Thanks.
Coach. Anything Todd says, listen, there's only a handful of people in the world I listen to and I trust when it comes to marketing business advice. And Todd and I have an ongoing standing weekly call, and we kind of always talk through business and life together. We help each other, and
Mhm.
Todd is just the goods. So just stick with him and you'll be fine. There you go. Todd,
Cheers,
was that
man.
a good endorsement? You're going to send me the check now?
Yeah,
Are
you're
we
a
still
gem.
recording?
We're gonna put that at the very front of the interview now.
Perfect. All right.
Anyways, Rye, you're a gem. Appreciate it. Have a great day.
Thanks,
And
Todd.
to the listener, we'll see you in the next episode.